What's up everyone and welcome to another Warframe video. A fair while ago I did a video talking about solo High Risk Prodman and the way to solo that as easily as you possibly can. Well, obviously Melee 3.0 has happened since then, and the melee portion of that video has been shaken up pretty massively. So let's take a step back, update this strat, and get back to taking down that Prodman. This is going to be a very build heavy video. We've got the frame, we've got a condition overload procer, and 3 different melee weapons to cover, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. So let's start with the why. Why did I do this, and what did I set my goals out to be with this video? Well, the thing is, when you look at challenge in Warframe, the only one that's really vaguely difficult these days is a Prodman run, an hour into the index. Especially solo, because the enemies get super tanky and hit crazy hard, and amassing points to score lowers your hit points, all of which makes it very tough on a frame. But while you can do this on low risk, let's be honest, that's nowhere near as much of a challenge as doing it on the high risk, the hardest of the 3 index difficulties. My goal for this though, with the weapons especially, was to get 8 credit rewards in the hour-long Prodman run, which is a cool 2 million credits an hour or 4 million with a booster, so that while you might be running a Prodman run, you're still making a very good amount of credits as well, so it doesn't feel like you're only going for that Prodman poster. This meant that I got a very good idea of what worked well, and gave me a good goal for things to hit for me to feel that they were actually good enough for the video. So with that little bit out of the way, let's launch into our builds. Let's start with the frame. The only one I have found that can do this reasonably, and without dying all the time, is Revenant. Now Revenant's a frame that honestly most people don't really play, and I don't see him often at all in the normal game, mostly because the ability we're going to focus on here, his defensive second ability, Mesmer Skin, gets stripped extremely quickly in a regular mission. But for the index, it's absolutely incredible, and the reduced enemy numbers play right into its hands. What Mesmer Skin does is that when you cast it, Revenant protects himself with sentient energy, building up charges of protection. Each of these charges will absorb any damaging hit and will not allow Revenant to take any damage at all, and that makes it ideal for huge, high damaging hits like the units in the index throw out. In addition to this, only enemies that are alive and not asleep can consume charges, which means no accidental deaths to lingering attacks like the mines that Soul drops. And that's not all either. The unit that does the damaging hit will also be put to sleep for 5 seconds. This stops them from shooting you again and taking another charge away from your Mesmer Skin. I've seen some builds that tank duration, make it super short, but this hurts you way more than it helps. Enemies that wake up and shoot again and take more charges from your skin. That makes it drain way faster and makes it so you have to recast constantly. Whereas the build I'm about to show you, they're slept for 10 seconds, long enough for you to deal with them and keep them away from your Mesmer Skin charges. Revenant's super easy to play though, you don't have to worry about anything whatsoever. Just make sure you keep your Mesmer Skin up, go and refresh it every time it gets low. You can do these runs deathless if you can keep your concentration. I normally die a couple of times doing this due to just simply losing concentration, but if you're better at it than I am, you can do this without ever dying. So since you only have to deal with Mesmer Skin, you can focus on doing your damage and focus on killing effectively. Which leads us pretty nicely onto the actual build of the frame, focusing around power, strength and duration for this, for as many charges as Mesmer Skin as possible, as well as increasing the sleep duration. Aura, we've got a choice of 2 here. The one on screen is the one that I was using for my heavy attacking Zor build, we'll see later, so I had it in there for the speeding up of the heavy attack. The extra combo timer is nice for the combo based melees, but honestly, it's not really needed since we're going to be using Power Spike from Naramon for dealing with our combo timers. You could switch out for a Steel Charge if you want. I didn't feel it provided enough of a boost over using something with more utility. So my second choice for auras is Enemy Radar. We do have an Enemy Radar mod on the build, but having more when we're pushing for efficiency and efficient killing is extremely nice, and it will let us know where the enemies are at all times. Rest of the build's pretty self-explanatory really. Umbral Intensify, Augur Secrets, Power Drift, and Energy Conversion for power strength. Energy Conversion can be an awkward mod to use normally in the regular game, because it relies on an energy orb, but since it's the index, we've got a guaranteed spawn. That's how we're getting our energy, and it's always going to be procced. So that is a very easy power strength buff with no negative. Then we have Narrow-Minded and Prime Continuity for the duration of the sleep, Streamline Fleeting for efficiency. The energy drain when you're stacking a lot of points is very, very crazy, and this helps us make sure we can have our Mesmer skin up very, very easily. And then finally, Vigilante Pursuit for the extra enemy radar. Arcanes, I'm using a couple ones here to buff my melee: Arcane Strike for melee attack speed, and Arcane Fury for melee damage. Both of these aren't really necessary, but let's be real, it doesn't hurt to have them on. And that brings us on to the weapons. Let's start with the one that's going to be the same on all builds, the Condition Overload proccing secondary, the Rattle Guts. Now I know that there's probably a bunch of options people will talk about with secondaries, but there is one amazing reason why Rattle Guts comes out so far ahead. Pax Charge, the Kit Gun Arcane. Turns the weapon into a battery-style weapon that regens ammo, rather than using ammo normally, which nothing other than the kit guns can get. This puts Rattle Guts immediately leagues above all the other Condition Overload proccing secondary weapons. The parts we're going to use for this Rattle Guts are the Ram Flare and the Gibber. That's going to give us high status and a high fire rate, because we're going to be focusing on stripping that armor super quickly, as well as getting a high amount of procs per second. We've got the mods on here that Barrel Diffusion, Lethal Torrent, Gunslinger, and Anemic Agility for fire rate. We've got 3 dual stats, in this case Pistol Pestilence, Jolt, and Frostbite for corrosive and cold damage, and then Pathogen rounds to feed into our corrosive combo and weight our procs towards armor stripping. Now the reason I went cold rather than heat is because, well, heat does kind of act like viral for armor. Since corrosive is percentage based, halving the armor with heat actually doesn't make stripping it any faster. And the cold is really good for that nice little bit of crowd control, making enemies easier to hit with your melee. The best thing though about this Rattle Guts is that we have 35 rounds per second fire rate, 5 different procs, 99.9% status chance. It is going to be a massive boost to your melee weapon damage. We're going to strip armor absolutely, just almost immediately. And yeah, that buff to Condition Overload, we are going to be relying on some pretty crazy procs to boost our melee weapon damage. So that's the frame and the Condition Overload proc are done. Time for the melee weapons, and basically melee weapons are the only thing that's going to take you this far. It's 3 weapons, 4 builds in this one, although this is far from exhaustive. I'm sure there are others that can fit my requirements, but these are the ones I had the easiest time with. So let's start off with my favourite melee that came with Melee 3.0, the Heavy Attack Nikana. I did the video on this a few weeks ago, since then I've been using it a lot. So naturally it was going to get a look in for this. Built using Varkeet 2Jai, Vapay and Sepfan, this is going to be relying a lot on the Force Slash proc from the Heavy Attack, and running a very simple heavy attack build. For the build, we're going to be running Condition Overload for our base damage. With our Condition Overload procer, it's infinitely better than Prime Pressure Point. Corrupt Charge for the double damage from the heavy attacks. Gladiator Might and Amalgam Organ Shatter for the crit damage, as well as the sped up heavy attack from the Amalgam. Sacrificial Steel for our crit chance boost. That's going to get doubled every time we heavy attack. Prime Fever Strike for just straight Toxin, that's going to bypass the enemy's shields directly, and a brand new mod that's actually changed the heavy attack meta immediately, and that's the Primed Smite Corpus. Primed Smite actually causes both the slash procs and the rare Toxin procs to double dip when it comes to damage, amplifying it more than any other mod would, so it is an amazing choice here. And then it comes down to just using it. Thankfully, it's one of the simplest weapons to use. However, for this, sadly, it's one of the most awkward. The problem is that you can't proc with your secondary and then go immediately into a heavy attack. Because of the way the melee system works, basically, you have to proc with the Rattle Guts, do a normal attack, a light attack, and then launch into your heavies. It's not a big deal to work around, but it does mean that it feels a bit clunky to use. However, there's no denying its raw power and efficiency here. The only place it falls down a little bit is that Azoth and Lockjaw are both immune to slash procs for whatever reason, meaning that those are going to be harder to take down. However, with the Toxin going straight to health and the CO procer shredding armor in no time at all, they die pretty quickly. It is definitely my top weapon for this though, despite it being a little bit clunky. It's chill, easy to use, and once you get into a rhythm, remember to do that extra light attack before you heavy. It feels good and will take you to an hour, killing very efficiently. Second weapon's one you probably expected, and that's the Redeemer Prime. Yeah, it's right, this video was never not going to have the Redeemer in it, was it? Well, this is actually one of the ones with, well, it's the one with 2 builds, because I found 2 ways of getting it to that magical hour mark while killing well. Unfortunately, Heavy Redeemer just fell off too hard for me, so they are both light attack builds, so while the builds are different, they do play the same. Good Condition Overload for base damage, Blood Rush for crit chance as the combo goes up, Organ Shatter for crit damage, Weeping Wounds for 100% status as the combo goes up, Berserker for attack speed, and then we have Gas Damage and Prime Smite Corpus. Now remember how I said that Toxin double dips on damage calculation because of the Prime Smite? Well, Gas triple dips, which massively increases the damage output. And with the fact that we're going to have 100% status, it's going to be proccing massive gas procs and the Toxin effect that comes from that, plus the small AoE on the gas proc which can hit other enemies around. It's a more effective build than I expected it to be, and definitely deserves to be on here. However, you can switch it up a bit. Drop the Molten Impact and replace it with maybe a Prime Fury. That way you get the Toxin procs double dipping, but unlike the gas damage, which gets wasted quite a bit because it hits the shields, Toxin bypasses straight past the shields, so the shield scaling becomes completely nullified. You're going to lose proc damage by going from gas to Toxin because of the triple dip down to double dip, but you're going to gain raw damage by the Toxin effectively immediately being effective rather than only being good once the shields are gone. But both of these play in exactly the same way. Personally, I bind my attack input to the mouse wheel scroll wheel, mouse wheel scrolling even, and then just go to town. The gas build is easier for those without the ability to use the mouse wheel because it has less attack speed, but both of them are easy to use. Fire your Rattle Guts, proc your status effects, and then just normal attacks, your light attacks, demolish everything in front of you. Nothing particularly crazy here, but it is an incredibly effective option. And the final option here is a polearm I kind of showed off in the meta builds video a few weeks ago. Built using the Vargitjai 2, Sikala and the Plague Kripath, it's a very strong upgrade to the Orthos Prime, and honestly one that properly surprised me when I took it into a run. The build is the same as the Toxin based Redeemer for this, pure Toxin crit with Weeping Wounds. Not going to hit 100% status here, so the procs are going to be slightly less, we're going to have less of them. However, with its high attack speed, inbuilt viral, that viral proc from time to time really cuts down that time to kill. Plus, it's another thing for Condition Overload to work off of. It's another very fast melee that I tend to bind to mouse wheel to be able to control. However, if it's too fast for controller, for example, you can always take off attack speed arcane for the frame. I'm not going to spend too long on this though, because I'm going to have a video on this separately in the next few days or so. Needless to say though, it's a huge amount more effective than I expected. And that's pretty much that. Solo High Risk Prodman is pretty much the only big challenge in the game. With these combos you can achieve that really, really easily, but not just achieve it, but farm a load of credits at the same time. I farmed around 30 million credits making this video, which is a testament to just how well these weapons work, and how effective they are at killing. If you've got any suggestions of how to improve things, or things that I should try out, let me know in the comments below. I'll be as active I can in the comments once again. But for now, many thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button, sub for more Warframe content, and I shall catch you in the next video.